The different words that came from different languages were more or less based on the background in which the language was introduced. From the 7th to 10th centuries, Latin was being introduced in the context of Christianity, so a lot of the words that came from Latin were religious. However, of course, there were also influences in other categories, like domestic life, foods, plants, but especially learning, because when people came to spread religion, they built temples and churches, which were also schools. All of these categories have words that came from Latin. These words haven't gone through a lot of big changes, so it's very easy to see the resemblance between Latin and English. For example, the word nun. Originally, it came from the more religious side of Latin, the word nonus, meaning monk, which the feminine is nona. In Old English, it became nune, meaning Christian woman, then was reinforced by Old French nonne, meaning nun, and it resulted into nun. Comparing nonus and nun, it is very easy to see how they are related. But why all these new religious words in the beginning of the Renaissance? Because that was a time when writers wanted to sound very fancy in their writings, and so they started using Latin, a foreign and holy language, and used it to make new and complicated words. These words were called inkhorns. An inkhorn is literally a container of ink, and maybe these new words were called that because they required more ink to write? It isn't very certain, but a lot of writers were creating these new words, but other people, sometimes even other writers, really didn't approve of that. This was during the early modern English period, when people were trying to standardize and perfect the English language, so adding words from a different language was just nonsense. However, despite their best efforts, some of these new words stuck until today. For example, celebrate. It came from the Latin celeber, which means frequented or honored. Then this turned into the Latin verb celebrare, which means to celebrate, which then created the adjective celebrat, which means celebrated, which was taken and turned in late Middle English to celebrate. Through the spread of Christianity and the occurrence of the Italian Renaissance, Latin flourished and was established as an influential part in diversifying the English language. Many Latin words regarding education, Christianity, and many other words can be found in everyday English conversation now.